Hi everyone, happy Thursday and welcome to this week's episode of How to HR. Kristy-Lee here, your host of this weekly video series, and we are here for episode number 31 of the How to HR series. Now, if you're new to this series, we are here each and every week on a Thursday to bring you a tactic, tip, strategy or tool that's going to help when it comes to your team. Whether it's something to do with compliance, whether it's something to do with engagement and motivation, leadership, anything at all when it comes to building your amazing team for your business to help deliver the business success that you desire, but also the freedom that you seek as a business owner, a leader, or a manager in your organization. So we're here each and every Thursday with one of these very quick strategy tips or tools for you to use in your business. And today we're talking about the right to disconnect from not only our businesses, but our employees' right to disconnect from their role. Because here's the thing, we're in a world of work now where we can access emails, chat, communications 24/7, 365 days a year. And there's heaps of benefits to that. Don't get me wrong. When this was all very new and fresh and shiny, we loved the fact that we could access things remotely. Certainly the fact that we're no longer tied to an office is a great thing. But sometimes it can come with a little bit of a double-edged sword in regards to some more negative consequences. And that's what we're here to chat to you about today on How to HR. Now, if you have any questions as we go along, or even if you're catching the replay afterwards and you want to add anything or ask a question, please feel free to pop a comment under the video here, and I'll be certainly happy to come back and answer that for you. So why are we chatting about this right to disconnect, and what does it actually mean? Well, here's the thing. We've all been in this situation before. We see an email come through on our phone. It's 7 a.m. We're madly getting the kids ready for school or prepping something in the kitchen. And we see this email from a client. Maybe it's a complaint. Maybe it's a problem with an order. And our heart just sinks. Straight away, we're thinking about what we're going to have to deal with when we get into the office, how we're going to fix the problem. We're starting to think about work and nonstop think about work from that very moment. And possibly as well, and I'm sure you've done this before, you're unwinding of an evening, perhaps you've cooked dinner, you're maybe catching some TV with the family, and you're checking your emails. You're on your phone, you're responding to emails from your boss or from your staff or from your clients. We are in a world of work, which means we never switch off. And if you've had those emails at 7 a.m., and I've certainly, unfortunately, read them at, difficult emails at 5 a.m. in the morning before, it means you are starting to work at that time mentally. And what's happened over time is that this isn't now just the world of the business owner. This is also now the world of our teams, because we all have access to this kind of technology all the time. And whilst it's fabulous that we can all be so connected, at what point does this level of connectedness become damaging and problematic in our workplaces? At what point does it become a safety risk to our employees? And at what point does it actually become a situation where we start to lose productivity, lose engagement, and lose profitability in our business? And we do hit that point. Really recently, we've seen a situation where the Victorian Police Department have added into their enterprise agreement a clause on the right to disconnect, which allows employees in that, employed by that employer to not be required to attend to work matters on their days off and outside of hours. Because you can imagine it in an environment like policing, it could very quickly become a 24/7 job. This is not great for mental alertness at work. It's not great for motivation. And it can, of course, also cause some safety risks. So we've seen this start to happen. And the chatter is we may start to see this happen more and more, possibly even coming into our modern award system. So we're starting to really look at, with all this work where we're so accessible all of the time, with many of us now having hybrid teams or teams that are working remotely, where do we draw the line in terms of what we expect and what we don't expect from our team? And really importantly, I think we need to understand here, this is not always our fault as employers when it comes to our expectations. Quite often, you'll see your employees take this upon themselves to be available and accessible all of the time in an effort to be great employees, which is wonderful to one extent. But when it becomes damaging to their ability to be focused and productive on the job when we need them there, that's when it's pendulum swung too far time. So if you're working in an environment where you are constantly always in contact 24/7, weekends, nights, early mornings, you will know from your own experience, if you've worked in a corporate like this, you will know from your own experience, I'm sure, that you can never switch off. And what we're seeing now in this world of hybrid and remote work, particularly, so we've seen a really sharp increase in this over the last 12 to 18 months, is that people are not disconnecting from work. There is no longer this separation between personal life and home life and work life. And we're seeing rates of burnout and mental fatigue at work skyrocket. And when we see that, the flip side, the negative consequence for the business is we see reduced productivity, reduced engagement, higher absenteeism, higher turnover in staff, and ultimately a less well-running business, which is always going to impact profitability at the end of the day as well. So how can we create an environment where we and our team all feel like we have a right to disconnect, and why is it important? Well, I'm going to start with the why is it important first. Firstly, high levels of burnout amongst your team are bad for business. You're going to have staff turnover issues, you're going to have absenteeism issues, you're going to have concentration issues, poor work quality, poor productivity, the list goes on. The combined effect of all of those things is you are losing profitability. We are seeing a sharp increase in this level of burnout and the issues associated with it because our teams are so now comfortable with working from home, but will also become really available all the time. They no longer have this opportunity to disconnect from the workplace. So we're seeing this become a huge issue for employers and employees alike. Now, I know very often this is not your responsibility. Your employee is so eager to please that they're doing it. But what can you as a business owner do to help create some parameters and some boundaries and to create an opportunity for everyone to disconnect? I think it comes down to three key things, and this is what they are: boundaries, communication, and expectations. It is that simple. Firstly, you want to start by communicating with your team, communicating the fact that despite the fact we may not all be working 9 to 5 in the office anymore, we need to create some boundaries for all of us, and we need to be respectful of others' boundaries. Part of the great benefit of being able to work remotely is that you can create much more flexible work environments, which means some employees may be working early in the morning, some may be working late at night, some may be doing split days, especially like me at the moment, you're juggling homeschooling, not doing a batch of work very early in the morning and then some through the day and then another batch in the evening. And that can work really well for your business and really well for your employees. However, when you've got a whole team of people doing all different, methods and systems of that, it does feel like everyone needs to be available for the others all the time. So you firstly need to start with communicating. What are we trying to achieve by putting in place these boundaries? When do we need to be available in terms of the non-negotiables? Because there will be times when you want your team to come together. And so you want to make sure there's going to be availability for that and that you're going to create that as a necessity. And what are our expectations of each other when it comes to availability? Communicate your boundaries. What's acceptable, what's not acceptable. Just because I'm working at 6 a.m. in the morning, I would not expect my team to respond to my emails or even read my emails at that time of the morning. Conversely, if some of my team are working at 8 p.m. at night, there shouldn't be an expectation that I will read or respond to their emails if that's their chosen work pattern. So setting some boundaries about responding when we're in our work zone and we're in our work time and not expecting responses outside of that. Setting some boundaries about turnaround times, and also setting some boundaries about making sure we have this opportunity to disconnect. Set expectations with your team about what that should look like, what we expect from each other in terms of a turnaround time, what we expect from each other when it comes to communication. Whatever it might be, communicate and get those set. Because once that happens, you can create an environment where everyone has the opportunity to disconnect from work, and you're creating boundaries and parameters for them to realistically do that, and you're enforcing it. You're getting them to do that. What this is going to result in is a team that's much more cohesive, that has built a much better layer of trust, and also that is much more focused and productive when they are working because they've had this opportunity to disconnect. So whilst it might seem like a bit of an unusual concept to talk about disconnecting when we're trying to get our teams to connect, I'm talking about disconnecting from work and the workplace. So I encourage you, if you haven't already, to create some boundaries around that if you are seeing this as an issue in your workplace. And it can happen so easily as we move to this remote form of working, which many of you now have forevermore. That's my really quick how-to HR update for this Thursday. I do hope you're well. I'll be back again next week for next week's episode. If there is a topic you would like me to cover on a future episode of How to HR, drop in a note under this video and I'll be sure to cover that for you. In the meantime, have a fabulous week and I look forward to chatting with you again next week on How to HR.